Good morning. I'm Dr. Petro. Welcome to the Science of Mind class here at CSLDallas. I know that 66% of the United States is under a heat watch, so I hope wherever you are in the United States, you are finding a way to be cool. And I know lots of other places around the world are the same. So if you want to join me at our Sunday celebration, and after this, we'll be doing some collective consciousness work around our planet and humanity's impact on our planet and in bringing our spirituality to bear in making a difference. So join me for that. And we're going to start today. We had some great questions last week. We had a wonderful conversation wrapping up this chapter on In the Beginning God. And we did have one question come in that we are going to have Ryan read out, and we're going to start with that question. We'll see if there are any leftover questions from last week, and then we will, in fact, conclude this chapter.
Dun, dun, dun. All right, well, thank you so much, Dr. Petra, and good morning, everybody. I know we're switching up the styles a little bit here, but this is a good question to ask and to put into the conversation. So here's the question. We often say there's a power for good in the universe and love and law. However, in the discussion of nature of reality, the concepts of good/love were not mentioned. In the nature of reality, from where do God/love arise?
You know, and it's such a great question. So part of the challenge is when we think of good and love, we think of it from the way we understand it as human beings. Love meaning I love you, I want to be with you, I love chocolate, so I want to eat it. We can increase our expression of love to compassion, right? Because I recognize that we're all part of the one, but it is still a way that I feel about you or a way that I feel towards you. Now, psychology has really explored love and recognized that beyond a feeling, it's also a decision that we make. That love isn't just a feeling, it's also a verb. It's a way in which we engage with each other, lovingly, compassionately. And those of us who have been in long-term relationships, right, we realize and remember that we have to remember that we love this person is so annoying. Those of us who have children have had to occasionally remember that we really do love our children when we would just as soon ship them off somewhere, right? And so it's a decision that we make. And so what we do is we anthropomorphize this infinite reality, and when we ascribe to it love, we're looking for a feeling back. Then the same thing happens with good in the fact that we have become habituated, certainly in the West, particularly religiously, to understand good as a moral and ethical description, right? In German, if you say, I'm good, somebody asks you, how are you? And you say, I'm good, what you're saying is, I'm a moral and upstanding human being. If you actually are asking you, how are you doing, you say, I am well in response, right? I'm physically well, I'm emotionally well. But if you say, I'm good, right, you're tapping into that. Good means to be moral and ethical and all the trappings that come with that. What we forget is that metaphysics comes out of a both mystical and philosophical conversation. And when most metaphysicians and most New Thought people, writers, especially from the 1800s, when they are using the term good, they pull this right out of Hinduism, and it is not a moral or ethical judgment or conversation. It is rather, my good is that which fulfills me. the good of life is for life. So I should have asked for the whiteboard before this started, but so I'm going to invite, well, if you can drag it up here, Richard, that'd be great. Thank you. I'm so sorry. And if Carmen, can I ask you for a pen? I need a whiteboard pen. So this idea comes straight from Aristotle. Thank you so much. That is perfect. So you just tell us where it needs to be, Richard, and we're going to use this. So when we think about good, we usually think in terms of good and evil, right? On the one hand, so we're enculturated to have a force for good and evil, and so we want to be on the side of good. And if you recall, oh wait, this conversation might have happened on Wednesday night. While we're waiting for a pen. So let me just start here. If you look at the conversation, if you look at the symbol of the cross, which is way older than Christianity, it's used in many, many, many cultures in different places, and especially in mystical spiritualities, in the mystery schools, right? The understanding of the cross is that, especially the equilateral cross, is that it is a symbol. It's basically a teaching symbol, like our teaching symbol, a symbol of reality. And the recognition or the understanding is that this vertical axis of the cross represents the essential nature of life. It represents the essential reality. And when we give that essential reality qualities, like joy and creativeness and intelligence, we're talking about the absolute reality of infinite reality without form, but its absolute potential. The Hindus call this the ultimate void from which all things come, and the womb of creation, right? All of it has the principles and the possibilities without anything being formed yet. The horizontal axis, thank you so much. The horizontal axis is what is referring to the physical plane, right? Anything from the quantum field on to the galaxies and the infinite universe. Anything that is a thing, that is in form, right? This axis of the cross, it represents that. And it has two sides, right? And so the Hindus, in their infinite wisdom, understood that while the vertical axis is a unity, this axis is where we get the pairs of opposites. So the pairs of opposites, up and down, hot and cold, right and left. If you ask those questions about the infinite reality, where's up? It's a nonsensical question, right? Up is always only related to something. It's always only relative, right? And so the pairs of opposites become then all of these ways in which we engage in the space-time continuum. It's either here or it's not here, right? This is space, this is a chair. This is something, this appears to be nothing. So we're constantly managing these pairs of opposites. It helps us. I mean, this is part of the fabric of the space-time continuum. So in the vertical axis, right, if we say good is a quality of the divine, now if we get on this vertical axis, there is no force as we understand it for evil. Those are the two sides, right? Good and evil. There's no force for evil. Evil, that which we call evil on this side, is simply the complete absence of what we would call good. And that which we would call good in its fullness is the complete presence of this quality, which is why, of course, we're always talking about resonance and alignment. Are we aligning, centering here, or are we out on these ends? That's not good, that's better, right? The judgments and pairs of opposites. So the same thing happens then, not only with good and evil, but love and hate. Right? We say on the opposite of love is hate, but there is actually no force for hate. Hate is the absolute unexpressed, complete absence of love. Now, it doesn't mean it's not potential. It doesn't mean it's not part of the essential reality, not only of life itself, but of that human being. But if it's not being expressed, right, this is the plane of expression. So we have many layers, right, of the way that this can be expressed. So love can be, I like you. Love can be neutral. I have no opinion about you. Kind of like you. Maybe we should hang around. Oh, you're funny. I think you should be my friend. Oh, you're really attractive to me, right? And further out. Oh, wait, if I love you and you're a human being, that's true. You know, maybe that's true for all human beings, right? And then and the same thing, we're going out here. I'm kind of neutral. Not sure I really like you. No, I really don't want to go to coffee with you. No, I'm really going to create some boundaries around you. No, I really disagree with how you're behaving. That is unacceptable behavior, right? All the way out to that which we call hate. I now think you're a horrible and terrible human being, and I'm going to do everything I can to, whatever it is, cut you down, slander you, take you off the playing field. And so when we, in a metaphysics, when we're talking about good and we're talking about love, we're always starting in the nature of reality with this truth. And so we have to go back to the idea that life is one whole infinite reality. And if we go back to I don't know where it is. We have to go through, here. No. So you can go back to the previous, I'm going to paraphrase because I can't find it. Go back to some of the previous subsections here. The argument goes like this. If it's all one, both the tangible creation and the intangible reality, if it's all one, then the nature of reality has to be for life, or it would actually be a house divided against itself. Now remember, we have the pairs of opposites, which we had this conversation, I think, last week, that, well, what about death and the cycles and the seasons? But that's just the way life is expressed in duality. So in duality, life has seasons and cycles, and we make death wrong and bad, when in fact it is simply life-changing form, right? But life itself cannot be against itself, or ultimately it would cease to exist, right? It would simply become locked into this no way forward, because we're talking about an infinite life and then infinite death. You can't have two infinities, right? We had the big conversation about that. You can't have two infinities. So if you have one infinity and its wholeness, it has to be life. Well, what's the fundamental quality of life besides aliveness? Anybody? Change. Good. Change for the sake of what?
Expansion or creation.
Growth. Expansion, creation, right? That's how we know something is alive. It's moving, it's growing, it's becoming, it's evolving. All of this activity, action, right? And that's why we're confused when it looks like rocks are dead, or it looks like matter is dead, and that's a whole other conversation. We will not get on that tangent. So the law is impersonal. It has no opinion about whether what is happening looks like it's for life. So the law has no opinion about volcanoes. If a volcano blows, it doesn't say this is a bad thing. It just says, oh, some magma needed to be released. And out of that, the law says, well, life is always for life. So what happens? Volcanic ash is some of the most fertile soil, and the creation of islands and all kinds of things. And the next thing you know, you have this amazing, lush experience. Think of the pictures after the fires in Yellowstone National Park. And then this plethora of flowers that emerged that hadn't been seen in 100 years. Because life is always for life. And so Aristotle uses this, and he talks about the good. And the good isn't good and evil. This is how we take this up, right? The good isn't about good and evil. The good is what draws life forward. If the inherent nature of reality is what draws life forward, right, that's something that we call good. And if life is inherently doing that, then everything that's needed, well, we could put this here. We could call this. Everything that's needed is present and available. And we call that love. Everything that's needed for this good to grow and evolve and express is already present. And so so the law can only respond to the individual intentionality, but the universal intentionality is always for life. That's the universal intentionality, is always for life. Therefore, love is always present. So Science of Mind describes love as the self-givingness of spirit into its creation. The self-givingness, everything that's needed for good to evolve is given. Love is the self-givingness of spirit into creation. So when I spent quite a bit of time trying to unhook from all of my dysfunctional ideas about love, then all my functional ideas about love, then all my functional ideas about relationships, right? Because this isn't a relationship. This is a reality. And so when you think about the fact that life became you and then gave everything to you to be life, how much more loved can we be? Absolutely nothing is withheld. Oh, I'm sorry, I don't like you, you can't have that. Oh, I'm sorry, you don't fit, you can't have that. Oh, no. All that BS, that's all human-made. Life doesn't say to the tree, I'm sorry, you can't have any fertilizer today because you got hit by lightning. You're no longer a perfect tree. You're out. Silly, right? Because life is, so the trajectory of life is for life. So another word for good can be life, aliveness, expression, things that move life forward. Okay? So now we take this into a human being, because that's, of course, always what we're most interested in. How does this relate to us? What does this mean? Because my brain hurts. I don't really care about the nature of reality. What about me? Okay, so we put a little person here. No comments about the stick figure. Thank you very much. And give a little hair. Put a little person here. So we have this little person here, and the question is then, what pulls us forward? What is good? What pulls us forward? Okay, it used to be for me, one of my goods was a coffee I would go buy at the store. Well, now we have a latte maker. Plus, I make my drip coffee at home, and I don't need to do it. But it's a pretty little good. It's a small, tiny good, right? So it makes me feel better for an hour or two. But when I was terribly addicted to this, of course, what did I need? I needed another one tomorrow. So it's a good that doesn't actually move me forward. So this good is the good for life, expression, fulfillment, right? Not an ethical or moral, although those will come in. Right now, getting a little cup of coffee, well, I don't know how much moral and ethical impact it has, unless I'm going to now start talking about fair trade coffee, right, which does, in fact, impact the larger good. But in terms of my own life, right? And so what happens is that we start finding larger and larger goods. So this is my beloved, or my work, right? It's probably not even that, it's probably not there yet. This is probably my TV and my Facebook page. How much good do we get out of that? Not so sure, right? Pulls us forward a little bit, and then we go like, oh, my life doesn't look so good. Do you see now this good has both a forward movement and a pushback? Do you see? Because there's only so much life it can pull us forward. Oh, I want to do that. Oh, that's exciting. Oh, I want to be a part of that. And yet, what are we doing? We're comparing ourselves to it. I can't have that. I don't have that. Those people, what are they doing? Or we get really pissed off by what other people are doing out there in Facebook, right? Because it doesn't have as much drawing power. So we might put work here. My work might have a lot of drawing power. For me, my work has had a whole career's worth of drawing power. But that doesn't mean that it hasn't had its pushback. It's hard. People don't always like what I say or do. They don't always agree. They think they leave. They leave in a huff, right? Whatever it is, right? It doesn't always have, but you can see that the draw for life is way bigger than the pushback. So it's a larger good for me. Now, I also think that a good is nature, which is lovely. And I've had a long pull from nature, but I've also had a lot of pushback because I have not been involved as much in climate change over the last 50 years as I know I needed to be. So it's only been recently, in the last 10, that I've started making decisions designed to put myself in alignment with the trajectory of nature healing itself. And that good is now a larger good, it means something to me, and it's pulling me forward again, instead of, quite frankly, wanting to run away. Put my head in the sand. It's too hard, it's too much, I can't figure it out, I'm too scared, I'm just going to love nature for myself, and whatever happens, happens. Too bad. Too bad, so sad. For all those people in Iraq and Iran who no longer have any water. Too bad, so sad. Right? And so do you see, this is how this good moves us forward. And Aristotle's idea is that the largest goods have the largest draw. Right? And out here, the largest good is spirit. To be pulled by our belief and understanding and desire to be as fully engaged, right? We could call this the one, the nature of reality, the whole. The larger and fuller that we are focused here, this good is the thing that draws us the furthest and has the least pushback. Because we are seeking to align ourselves here, and part of the reason it has the least pushback, because we are so loved that everything is given by this to bring us here. And so over and over and over again, when we're having this conversation, we have to uncouple our human understanding of these things. I want to, and this is where the traditional, every hair in my head is loved and counted, and right, because we want to feel the same love. But the reality of it is it's already been given, right? And in the beginning of chapter 2, we're going to talk about what happens here. This is our spirit human. Here we're spirit human. So we are on the evolutionary plane in expression, but we're also engaged at this level here. We are simultaneously engaged here and here, which is why we're spirit human. And what we want to do is understand how this works. What happens the moment self-consciousness arises, which is basically what it means to be a human being. Self-awareness, self-consciousness, the ability to learn and see that this is what's happening. And when we get to this point, right, that's going to lead us directly into the beginning of the next chapter, because of the fact that we are now not only aware of these two things, we are free to choose. We're not like the tree that is designed to always be for life. So what happens? It fruits, feeds, gives shade, provides stuff, clumps together to support each other. The mother tree, after it has enough babies in the forest, has enough babies, and they're growing, the babies are growing. Eventually, the mother tree at some point decides to sacrifice itself, give everything it has, so the baby trees can have the sunlight. It's nurtured it to that point, right? And it's not necessarily sucker baby trees, not like aspen and beech and things like that, but actual trees that have grown out of the fruit that has been dropped. And so it's just, it's designed, life is designed to do that. Over and over and over again, life is designed to do that. We, on the other hand, have the option to choose, which is where we then get into this question. Some things we choose, right? We choose violence. Well, it may pull us forward some, but boy, the pushback's pretty big, isn't it? Right? Which is why it can be construed as moral and ethical. But not because God said so, but because it's not pulling us forward. And we just have to look at life today, and we can see some of those choices and decisions that have been made that are now creating havoc. That's the pushback, because it's out of alignment with this trajectory. We're going to stop there. We're going to stop there. What questions, comments do you have? Ryan, please help me now.
Okay, yes. Don't worry about that, because we got plenty of questions for you.
Okay, good.
Yes, and welcome again to everybody here in the room, and for all of the folks joining us around the globe. Just real quick, I want to give some housekeeping instructions. So I know we have a lot of new folks that come and join us every week, so I just want to make sure that they're aware on how to participate and engage with us. For those in the room, you can just raise your hand, and myself and the iconic / bustling Richard here, who's been running around helping us today, will help hand you off a microphone, and that way you can speak your question into the room. And for the folks here on Zoom, you can go ahead and hit the raise your hand icon or put your question in the chat, and I'll bring that into the room as well. And I see we do have one, which I'll kick it off with. And for those who are joining us on Facebook, the same goes true for you. Please feel free to put your question in the chat. So, here's the question. Isn't this plane of existence, quote unquote, symbolic and not a literal point of physical reality? Reality is not a fixed point of existence, but rather a matter of perception. What are your thoughts?
Well, that's the Aristotelian point of view. Science of mind and new thought and metaphysics all disagree, because otherwise I'm robbing you of your essential nature. So science of mind would say it's silly to think that this isn't real. This is the manifest body of life. Without physicality of some sort, expression and form of some sort, the infinite is unexpressed. Now, is our universe, the 13.8 billion years of this particular universe, the only one? That seems ludicrous as well. If there's an infinite intangible reality, it has infinite number of ways in which to express itself. But metaphysics understands that without form, reality is unexpressed. So form is not bad, wrong, or an illusion. It is the way reality is expressing itself. And it's an outpicturing in an infinite number of ways that the initial idea, the initial sense of life itself can be created. So that's why we have, you know, creepy crawly things that they're only now discovering in the, what did I just read, in the bowels of the subway of New York City or London or somewhere. They've discovered a new little insect. And, you know, and it's like, wow, right? And things that live in the vents down in the ocean that supposedly nothing could survive in, right? And, you know, God knows what else. Surely, you know, all the galaxies and there must be life all over the place doing all different kinds of things, because an infinite life needs an infinite number of expressions. That's why we are so committed to reality having both an intangible and tangible aspect to it, and that's the wholeness. Now, there is an Eastern tradition that says all of this is an illusion. Plato really talked about this. Actually, it was Plotinus who really talked about this was just a reflection. But the other side of that coin is you have to take into consideration everything that Hinduism has said, that Locke and Hume have said, that Aristotle has said, right? And in the science of mind, we are committed to the wholeness, which is a both and. It's never an either or. It's a both and. What's important to recognize is that in this whole thing, right, it is the intangible. It is the intangible that is the cause, right? This is what I think that we're getting to here in this question. This is the cause of all of this. The pushback is when we are participating in causes that are not in alignment with this cause. We can certainly do it, but we are out of alignment with this cause. And so we get this massive pushback. And it's just a lot harder. You have to work a whole lot harder to make these things happen when you're not in alignment with the general trajectory of life itself. So it's a very popular opinion. If it works for you and you love it and it makes reality, you know, available to you, great. What we don't do then is also to say that perception is not real. Perception, yes. Once we've had an experience or we've observed or we've done whatever, we do actually have to parse. Is this real or is it my perception? Both of those things are happening at the same time. So it might be real that that person did in fact do something that was damaging to me. That person did in fact cross my boundaries, and I get to say, no, my essential self and your essential self are in a disagreement about this, and I get to say no. On the other hand, it could be that you look a lot like my mother or my dad, and you're behaving in a certain way, and it feels to me like you've overstepped my boundaries, which may or may not actually be the case. And so I have to examine my perception as well as what's really happening. I have to ask myself here what's going on. I have to ask myself here what's going on. And fundamentally, ultimately, I have to ask myself what's causal. What's causal within me now as to how I'm going to move forward. I can't always know what's causal with somebody else. That's when we start diagnosing them and we start saying, oh, I know that they're blah, 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 blah. I don't do any of that. That's called judgment as far as I'm concerned. But I can say, this is what's okay with me, and I don't have to defend it. I can just say, this is what's okay with me, and this is what's not okay with me, right? So this idea of illusion, it's very Buddhist. It's very, Plotinus really goes through into it, which is why we need the check of Aristotle, phenomenology, if you're into that, the whole idea that we have to see that how much our perception impacts, psychology, all of that. So again, what we're trying to understand is that it's a both and. We always lose half of reality if we make it an either or. This is just the way the science of mind understands it, New Thought, most of metaphysics, and a lot of the mystery schools. And so, but every map of reality is a little different. And so we have to find the one that really serves us. It's a great question. I can only answer it from what we teach here. Thanks.
All right, I just want to poll the folks here in the room. Anybody have a question or comment?
They didn't have enough coffee. Ross got coffee.
They're still diet.
Oh, right here. Shauna has a question.
Diagram Now, as I'm handing this over, I did want to mention, thanks to our facts checker out here, it's a new species of millipede was found under Los Angeles.
Oh, it was Los Angeles. I knew it was a big city. Sorry, thank you. I sort of skimmed it, yesterday or this morning, and I was like, oh my God, I love that. There's always something new.
Hi, I'm Shauna. This is out there, but as you were talking about everything's for life, I was thinking about, climate change and the ultimate thing that could happen to climate with us on climate change is that we as humans create a planet that's not livable for us. Mm-hmm. And yet we know even from the time of the dinosaurs, life will go on without us. Mm-hmm. So again, it's that sort of, what occurred to me is that sort of hierarchical Christian or religious perception of life, one life being more important than another life. Like there's a hierarchy. Like humans are more important than nature, or humans are more important than animals, or
yeah, and we have lost sight of our interdependence, right? That our actions actually impact others, impact our planet. And so, so we can make a mess. How many of us have made messes in our own life? That's right. Some of them catastrophic messes. Some of them that have taken years for us to crawl out of the hole or find a new way, right? And that's the whole point of free will, and which we're going to get into at the beginning of the next chapter. And it's really confusing and really challenging, but it is the single biggest, most important thing we have to take responsibility for, right? Is what we decide is the good. Is it exclusively for us as individuals? Is it exclusively for my family, my business, my country, humanity? Okay, that's a nanosecond in the infinite, in the reality of life itself. Right? And so, are we caring for the very place that we live, that we're a part of, is a huge question. Are we willing to make those kinds of decisions? So my good is I'm going to buy a truck and I'm going to get a gas guzzler, and I don't care about fuel, I don't care about the oil, I don't care about methane, I don't care about, climate, I don't care about any of that. Brick wall. That's where we're at. Because this was our good here. You can go for it all you want. But if you're not paying attention to whether it's right, that's when we have brick walls. Family members who are so engrossed in make money. I'm making it for the family. And then the next thing you know, the family's out the door getting a divorce because the whole good was make money. Do you see what I'm saying? So what we think is a good, but if it becomes myopic and we don't see this whole trajectory, right, our good can only take us so far. And quite frankly, can make messes, even though we think it's a good. Exactly. It's exactly right. And this is what is educating our choices. The outcome of the things that we choose as goods. We're choosing all these collectively and individually, and the outcomes and the amount of pushback and how this is all working, that is educating our choices, because now we are participating in the creative process. Here, this was all being done through the macrocosm in a somewhat, Thomas Troward says, so careful of the type, so uncaring of the individual. 500,000 salmon eggs, 100,000 are eaten by the frogs, and then the next 100,000 are eaten by the birds, and then the fingerlings, 300,000 grow as fingerlings. Well, they're food for everything else, right? And then 200,000 make it to the estuary, and 100,000 are picked off there. 100,000 make it out into the sea. They do their thing, they grow, they feed seals and orcas and God knows what else, and 10 come back, and one makes it to spawning to lay 100,000 eggs. The universe doesn't care which one, just that one makes it back, right? We, on the other hand, we have learned to care for which one. which is part of what also helps us, larger good, everybody included, right? But we actually have to think that way rather than purely on the, well, I don't care about what everybody else thinks as long as my family survives, right? I'm the one that's going to make it back. I don't care about, do you see? So, it's good.
My name is Ross, and this is a partial answer.
Yes.
In its own way, it's confusing because so many forces are in the pushback or they're going nowhere. They're at that brick wall.
Mm-hmm.
And there's got to be some positive function for that, like humanity learns something.
Well, that's the thing, right? It's educating our choices, right? Just as your teenager gets to get their choices educated when they, drive 100 miles an hour on the freeway or go to a party that is rated or, right? I mean, that's exactly right. That is exactly right. And that's the impersonalness of the law. That's the impersonalness of the law, not human law, the universal law. Because we have developed as an organ where consciousness can begin to see itself and recognize that there is a larger, there are choices that are beyond just the type, right? Some people say, well, as long as humanity survives, it doesn't really matter. I'm going to be part of humanity surviving because I have my little bunker, my food, right? And I'm going to make sure that I'm part of humanity surviving, right? That's the sort of unconscious agreement, that the unconscious way in which the universe creates. As long as something survives, life is still moving forward. But we have reached a different level of consciousness. That's exactly right. So we're going to talk all about that in chapter 2. This is the perfect bridge to bridge us into chapter 2. So Ryan has given me the wrap-up signal. So here we go. This is an answer to the question about this is reflection and it's not real and whatever. This is at the top of page 70. But God did make and does make and is making and will continue to make from eternity to eternity forms. We live in a universe of infinite substance and numberless forms where nothing is moved unless intelligence moves it in accordance with law. So this is why in the science of mind we join the ancient Jewish mystics and the indigenous traditions and the goddess traditions, and we recognize that creation is originally blessed. It is in fact the manifest body and expression of life itself, of the infinite, of the one. And without it, and it's necessary. Things may come and things may go, but creation goes on forever. This is indeed a wonderful concept, for it means that there will always be a manifestation of divine ideas, even if it's not here on planet Earth. They cannot cease so long as God exists, right? And we called God consciousness, universal spirit, the one. And since the one will forever be, there will forever be some kind of manifestation. The invisible will always be made manifest on some plane, right? Could be ethereal plane, we could all be light bodies in some galaxy somewhere, right? I'm sure that we'll all have that experience somewhere along the line, and we'll keep finding other ways in which to express in all kinds of different forms, through all kinds of different space-time continuums with all kinds of different physical laws. But the law of life, right, is the thing that's behind all of that. That the infinite, intangible, is forever expressing. So that's just what the science of mind understands. That's part of our map of reality. And it feels like it makes this plane of existence worthwhile. It makes our lives meaningful. And it makes our choices important. And it shows that we are not just here to get over being alive as a human, which I think is that's a challenging place to be. And it's not about withdrawing. It's not about withdrawing from it so that we can just be in spirit and never have to be bothered by anything. No, we're embodied souls. We're here for a reason. And the reason is to give our gift and to be ourselves. All right, thank you very much. So we're going to start with next chapter. Ryan was like, are we on chapter 2 yet? No, we're not yet. But we are next week. Tracy Brown, Dr. Tracy will be with us for the month of August. She'll really start us in on the mind, the greatest discovery. And of course, the very first conversation will be on free will and choice. We have been left alone to discover ourselves, which means we also get to discover just how to make messes and the choices that make those messes. Right? Are we in alignment with this trajectory for good or not? Now, there's a whole boatload of choices in the middle that really, it's just our good. Doesn't really have that larger impact, but there's lots and lots that do. All right, thank you so much. And we'll see you in the celebration in a little bit. We'll see you next week. We'll see you soon. Happy to be together. Bye for now.